This video is for developers using Alpha Anywhere from Alpha Software. It's for people who know CSS, or at least some CSS and HTML, and want to apply that knowledge for customizing their UX components. And let's look at this simple application that I have here. It's one panel card, which has a panel header with the static text panel header in it. It has two buttons and then a container, and the container has two static text controls, one that says static text and the other that says static text 2 with a break and then another line. And that's it. And if we look at it, we see the panel header up here, the two buttons nicely laid out next to each other and separated, and then the two static texts down here. If we look at this in Chrome or a browser where you can look at the details, let us look here. We can inspect a particular item by right-clicking, or in this case, typing Control-Shift-I. And now we're looking at the definition of that particular button. And you'll see that the button has, not just it's the button, but there's this class around it. There's the button down here. And it has a div around it with the class A5CW layout and width of nothing. And if you look at A5CW layout, it has padding of 4px, they're 4 pixels, and it floats left. This is also the case of the other button, and if we look at the two of them right next to each other, you can see that the separation between them comes because of this padding. If we remove the padding from A5CW layout, everything sort of comes together. The other thing is that it's a float left. That's why these go right next to each other and just fit. And if this got narrower, it would automatically wrap to the next line. If it didn't have the float, then each of these would be separate. So basically, this automatically putting in the A5CW layout makes it such that things just lay out very nicely. You also see here that the header, I don't know if you can see it, but there's a light gray line right above here, and then a let's see, if you look at the body, you'll see that there's a header, and the header has a border on the bottom of 1px of D9099, and then the body itself has a before setting over here that sets a background of black with 4% opacity, and it's at the top left and a height of 4 pixels. What this does is it sort of gives a little, like a shadow, that anything underneath it would scroll underneath to give an effect of this floating up on top. So this is automatically put there by this the theme that we're running, which is a version of the alpha theme in this particular case that we're seeing here. It's an early version of the alpha theme that ships with version 4 of Alpha Anywhere. So, but suppose you wanted to change this. You don't want to have the 4px. You want to be able to position something exactly where you'd like. How can you deal with that A5CW layout? Well, there are a couple things. One is that if we search for A5CW, here we go, A5CW layout, and find that property, then it's right down here. You can say what the padding is. So you can control that, but that controls it for the entire application, for the entire component. And you may not want to do that brute force. You may want to just set it for a particular, um, and you may not want it to be all the way over to the left. By default, using float, because one of the problems with float is that if you have things that aren't floated, the position of things gets kind of complicated because it pushes things out of the way. You may end up with something on a line that you don't expect. If you want to be able to completely control it, well, one thing you can do is you can say that the control container prevent the float. If you do that, and if we do this with these two, then when we look at it, we see that we have two buttons. They're just there. First of all, there's no padding. There is padding here. Let's go over here and bring this back up again. So now we still have 12 pixels. There's still a padding of 12 pixels that is around the body. And if we now look at this button, it has no class and no width, just a div that's sitting around the rest of the control. Now, why do we have a div around something here? Well, one is, by default, it's used to do the nice positioning and the responsiveness that a responsive design that you get by just laying things out. But the other is that sometimes a control has more than one piece to it. So, for example, it might have an input button that also an input field that also has some extra buttons associated with, etc. And you want to wrap them all up. And so to make things a lot easier, these are wrapped in these divs. And if you want to be able to do something else, let's say you want to be able to get the same effect, you'd like these to be able to be one after another. How do I do that? Well, you can't set the style, but you can set the class. So if I go over here and say control container class name, and if I go and look at local CSS, I have inline block. So let's look at inline block. Now, inline block, I can do this, double click, and here we have it. Inline block says treat this div as if it was inline. In other words, that it is treated like a character. It's in the flow of things. It doesn't automatically create a break after each block like a div normally does. Now when we look at it, these now are right next to each other, and you get them with control, where you now can control things by being able to affect that CSS that's in that class. You have more control over exactly the way the button lays out. So, for example, let's take this second button, and with the second button, we'll use this upper right selector, and we'll give the class, which gives it a position of absolute with a right of 0 and a top of 0. Okay, so let's do upper right also. So now, if you look at it, this is in the upper right. Remember, there's 12px around the side. So this was a way of being able to position things exactly where you want by using control container prevent float and control container class name, which is a useful thing to be able to do. Another thing that you might want to do is be able to use sub-themes. Now, the particular classes that are put on things is determined by the theme. And you can choose a sub-theme. So, for example, on button, we have a base class, a confirm class, and a deny class, which are built in this particular case. If I choose confirm, then what I get is I get a green button. Okay? And you can actually affect these yourself. You can create your own using the style builder, which is something else, but I'll show you a little more of that in a second. So by choosing the theme, it actually changes. Let's take a look. If we look here, so let's see what happened now. That this is now has a class of inline block because I've asked for it, and this one has inline block upper right, and the button has type button and button confirm. And so button confirm, if we look at it, add changes the color. And that's how that color is by, and though that was set because of the theme. So let's look a little more at that. Let's look at the panel. We're going to go here and look at the local subtheme definitions. So the local subtheme definitions are added to the theme and the theme's subthemes, and let you add your own for just this component. Okay, and I'm going to look at it here. And we can see here, there's a file called the style.js file that you'll see if you look in the CSS directory. You'll see this, that it has in it, for each of them, like in this case panel card, it has the definition of the different subthemes and the classes that are needed. There's the class name that applies to the panel card, and then for header we add this, and for body we add this. If we go down to button, let's see, there's list box, there's tree, and there's button. You see that for confirm, the class name is button and button confirm. And while for a normal one, the class name is just button. Okay? And so this JS file takes care of associating the names of the CSS classes with that are used at different places. So for example, here is the panel body and background, and here's the before. This is where that happened. And if we go down to button, here we go, we look at button, we see that the button class has these colors and padding and the border radius and the border, etc. It's a very small one here. But we also see that for confirm, the color is different. Okay? So this is how you do these. And here I have a specific one. I'm saying that for a panel card, I want to add another subtheme called simple panel. And for header, we'll use the simple panel header. For body, we'll use the simple panel body. And for footer, we'll use the same simple panel header. And the CSS is simple panel header has a color of white. So it's a white color for the text with a background color of 777, which is a medium gray, and a height of 44 pixels. The body has a background of white, but there is no there's no padding. And over here, this simple, so this has no line underneath it. And the simple panel body before and after have nothing. No longer do they have that little transparent or semi-transparent gray to shadow in it. Okay, so these I put in here, and if I go over here and say let's use a subtheme of simple panel, it doesn't have it shown here because this was added. It's not part of the theme itself. It's just local, but I can choose simple panel. And now we'll take a look at it. And we see the panel is gray on the top, as it should be, and we see that there's no spacing around here. Now we also see that this button is over here. This is because this is becomes float left, and there's enough room to be able to push this in here because it doesn't have that there. So we can, if we go back here and take this container and say prevent container float, then we go back, and now it's, notice no space, etc. Before it fit because the padding made this too wide. And so remember I said that there are some anomalies that you get when you float left. This is an example of those anomalies. So, so here we've used a sub-theme to be able to get more control over exactly how we want the screen to look. So now let's look at these two. Be nice. One of the things we often want to do is to vertically center something. In this case, the text. We have one line and two lines. Let's vertically center the text there. So, well, it turns out you can't just say text align vertical or vertical align middle. You can't just normally do that. That doesn't, if I go here and say vertical align middle, which is a CSS setting, if I go here, it doesn't do anything. But if we look at it, it is vertical align middle, but it didn't do anything because that doesn't apply in this case. However, what we could do instead is to say, this is 70 high, a height of 70. So let us set the line height to be 70 px. What's nice about line height is, by default, that vertically centers. So we get this thing vertically centered based on the baseline, or there's some things you can do to change it a little bit, but this is a nice way to be able to vertically center something, and can be used in buttons, etc., and is frequently used by making the line height the same as the height that you have for that part. However, if we go here, if I say line height 70 px, we run into a problem. Well, 70 px, that's, for multiple lines, this doesn't work because each line now has that. And what you really wanted is some other way to be able to vertically align. So there's something that seems to work that some people use, which is basically, well, first of all, you can always make a table. Table cells can be vertically aligned. This is from very early on in HTML. They've had that, and they still have it, so that if I say that this is display as a table cell, and then when I display it as a table cell, and if I give it a width, let's give this a width of 150 px, and let's give it vertical align middle. Then what we see, we get a vertical align middle. And this can be used for more than just text. You can have multiple, you may have multiple divs in here, and it's a way of being able to center them vertically. There are issues with this. One is that you do have to have a width, even if the width may be very wide. So sometimes you can make the width, let's say like 1,000 or 10 or 2,000, but it'll be clipped to the right size because columns are supposed to be that. You can look at HTML and CSS to see some other things about the setting. This is Not something you normally do, but it is in a pinch if you have to, is a way to be able to do those things. So hopefully you've seen from this, this video a little bit about how to customize the CSS and the HTML that you want to be able to get the effects that you want on the screen. I want to show one other one. We had the sub theme, and if you remember the sub theme, well, so we can just go right here, of the button affected this button. But remember, we have inline block, which is up here. So this is on the top. This is here. Let's go look at the things we can set. We can set the control container class. We can set the sub theme. We can also set the button class, which can add to this. You can. The other is the inline style. So let's look at this. This is the button inline style, and we'll put this, we'll say font weight bold, and the button text inline style, we'll say here, we'll put in a color of red, okay? So we've now affected the button and the button text inline. And if we look at that, we see that we have bold and red as we would expect or hope. And if we go here and look at it, we can see that the font weight was added to the button, and the text style down here was added as a span around the text. So this is a useful thing to do, to be able to go and inspect what's produced, and you can see exactly what part of the control's properties affect what part of the control. So this is another technique you can use when you're trying to get exactly the design that you want, because sometimes you get a design from somebody who only knows HTML and CSS and gives you in a certain way, and you want to be able to figure out how to copy those and apply those to your control. And Alpha Anywhere is set up to automatically do a lot of the things you want automatically, but sometimes that's that conflicts with what you want to do, so you need to know how to be able to set your own. And Alpha Anywhere gives you the ability if you just know where to look, and that's what I've been trying to explain here. So thank you very much.